having some vulnerabilities, and in other words, showing your human side, or being able to admit that maybe you were thinking of something incorrectly or the wrong way, or the narrative in your head wasn't quite right, that actually makes you more approachable. It makes you a better leader to have that humanistic side of things.
Right. Suzanne, you're back.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
How's life as the CEO of the
COO.
most amazing fitness franchise ever created?
Well, I don't know. I'm not the CEO. I'm the COO.
Did I say CEO?
Yes, you did.
Oh, guess what? You've been promoted or demoted, I would say. Depends on how you look at it.
Right.
I will now be the chief branding officer, which is I'll be like Marky Mark
That'd be good.
for F45, where
And
I
then
don't really
can
do anything.
Just
I just
take
like
your job and let somebody else do all the work.
Yes.
That'd be
Oh, you dirty! I can't believe you said that, but that is actually true. That's hilarious. Good for you. Hey, speaking of jokes, did you bring a dad joke?
I did.
What you got? I'm already laughing.
How do farmers party?
How do farmers party? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
They turn up the beats.
Oh, you stinker. That's good.
All right, let's
well, I
hear
don't know if
yours.
you know, this is more of a did you know, but did you know that Lance is a pretty rare name these days?
Yeah, I don't hear it very often.
Yeah, I mean, well, Lance Armstrong, but you don't hear Lance much.
Not very much.
Well, you know, in the medieval days, they used Lance a lot.
They did.
Sir Lancelot, I should say.
That's true.
But
They
boom,
did
love it.
use Lancelot.
All right, let's talk about some real stuff.
All right.
And so this is something that we both read. Actually, I was like, "Hey, did you read this?" You're like, "I did." I'm like,
just
"Oh,
read it.
let's do it. Let's talk about it." So, The 5 Temptations of a CEO by Patrick Lencioni, and he did The 5 Dysfunctions of Team and a bunch of other books that we've all written, that we've all
Red.
read.
Am I making you nervous?
I'm so nervous. Your dad joke slayed me. That we've read as a team and done exercises around. So I like his work overall. And the 5 temptations of a CEO we're going to cover today. So I'll read the 5 off, and then we'll kind of go through them one at a time because we have thoughts on them.
Yeah.
And I think, when you hear CEO, you guys, if you're a new entrepreneur, like if you're a new Alloy franchisee, this would apply to you. You're the CEO of your own business. I would argue like our theme for last year for our B2C marketing was be the CEO of your own health.
Yep.
So like I would say in a lot of ways, just, having that sovereignty, like the agency over your own self, you could almost use these principles and be the CEO of your own life. And I know that sounds corny and I'm not trying to wordplay, but I really think it's true. And so
It is. It crosses over to your personal life as well as can be.
yeah. So think
applied
about
to your
this as like,
business.
you don't have to be a CEO to get something from this. You could clearly just lead yourself as a CEO. I know it's a stretch, but think about it that way. So the first one is the temptation is status over results. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is popularity over accountability.
Right.
Number 3 is certainty over clarity. Mm-hmm. Harmony over conflict, and finally, invulnerability over trust. So we're going to just walk through these.
Yep.
And these are temptations. So these are things that are easy to do, and which I think would be like you lose a little bit control of your emotions, or your thought process is a little funky, your stories are wrong, or whatever. And people are apt to do these things. So the first one is status over results. And so why don't we just go tit for tat? Like, let's start with you. What does that mean to you?
So I think it's a warning. It's a warning to kind of be transparent and not try to project some sort of illusion that everything's perfect, or that you're bigger than you are, or that you are wealthier than you are, or whatever. And I think in today's world, especially with social media and everything, people tend to get caught up with status. Luckily, I don't really fall victim to that. I don't care. I don't think a $5,000 handbag makes you important. It just, in my opinion,
could just make you a dumb consumer.
Exactly.
That has a lot of debt.
Well, that's what I think.
But not always. You could also just be. It could be a normal person for you if you're high income.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think in our application, in our business, we certainly want to project an image of success and transparency and honesty and trust, if you will. Those are all big things in our core values. But I think that we also hold ourselves and hold our teammates accountable because we run EOS. And in so doing, we have measurable metrics. Everyone knows what they're accountable for, and we hold everybody's feet to the fire for that. And that's from a place of care, but no one can hide. You cannot hide if you've got clear metrics and clear expectations that are measurable, that you are being held accountable to. So I think we get results because of the way we have implemented EOS. And at the same time, we're not so focused on status, although that's kind of the end result is success. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I think, and that's an interesting take because you're looking at it like internally, how do we not try to hold status, right?
Right.
I think of it more externally. And certainly to your point, there is marketing, right? And I'm air quoting if you're not watching. And marketing is in some ways the illusion of success, or put it this way, you're shining a bright light on the things that are going well for you. And I think, duh, right?
I mean, that's...
As you should.
Exactly.
That's marketing, right?
Right. That's not lying or putting forth something that's not true.
It's not. And what I love about franchising is obviously the most litigious business ever. And you can't, if it's not claimed in your franchise documents, you can't even talk about it.
Correct.
So like, I mean, we can't advertise or put anything on social media that's not absolutely true. But I think to your point, social media, it's not just personally, and certainly it happens there, but even from a business standpoint, it's easy to look at someone's business and they're like, they are killing it, right? Because it looks great. Maybe just the artwork and the graphics and the way they post and those things are really nice. So you just feel like, man, this business is crushing it. And you get FOMO or whatever, but you really don't know what's going on until you take a peek under the covers. And so I think that if you just do the thing well and you don't worry so much about what it looks like, the results will speak for themselves. Like if you're killing, and I mean you're killing because you're really killing, you're not talking about killing, you're not selling a course on how to kill it, you're killing it.
Right.
The results will speak for themselves.
100%.
And for us, that would be, say, franchise validation. Like we talked about, a third of our franchises that we awarded in the last quarter came from existing franchisees. You don't get better validation than that. I'll stand on something like that, right? Like that's awesome. That's results. Right. That's not status. I'm not saying we have the coolest franchise ever, or, you know, making up, things that aren't true. So I think to your point though, the illusion, and it's certainly, I think personal and business, there's a bleed over, right? So you're the principal in the company and you're the COO. I'm principal in the company, I'm the CEO. So it's easy for even us personally to go forth with some kind of a message or whatever. You don't get as caught up in that, obviously, but I think I heard some funny stats the other day these are more on the personal side of status over results, that couples that don't post often on social media versus couples that post, like, I think 3 to 4 times a week on social media. The couples that post more often are 128% more likely to get divorced.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
So it's like they're not selling like, oh, look at me, oh my God, husband of my dreams, or I love my wifey, and everything they do is public. Again, it would be perceptually they have this great relationship, and then you're just shocked when you find out they don't.
Well, they're just trying to convince themselves probably that everything is better than it really is, and hopefully they're trying to convince the world. But yeah, I think if you have to talk about it more than just actually do the thing.
Well, it's the same thing in business. Like, I don't post anything that's not a client testimonial or something that we've actually accomplished that we can't even make up, right? The other thing I have on here is, like, if you are so worried about status over results, you'll be afraid to ask for help. Like, I've always prided myself on being a student, not a critic. And so I could probably learn something by going to a very intermediate personal training conference. And I might be reminded of something that we should be doing that we're not.
Right.
That I could then take back and implement at scale.
Sure.
But that's my mindset, right? And if I was worried that the person I was asking the questions of, who might be a 25-year-old whiz kid trainer, right, or a business savant, right, if I was worried about them viewing me as lesser than because I didn't want to ask them questions, then I wouldn't ever get any answers. I would always try to be the smartest guy in every room, which is a terrible idea. You're never going to grow.
Right.
So I think looking at that as like a personal status, like how do you view yourself versus actual results? Can you set your ego aside and get the things that you need to grow your business, right? Or to grow yourself personally. And I think, and you see this, I've found that the more successful people are, the more questions that they ask and the less braggadocious that they are. Very unassuming. You'll see a guy that's a billionaire and he's, met billionaires and they're wearing t-shirts and jeans, and they ask a ton of questions and they're very friendly, and you're just like, oh, and then you find out it's the most successul guy in the room and you never would have guessed it. Well, he's that way on purpose, right? And so they do ask a lot of questions. So anyway, I think, like, if you're more worried about how you look, it's a fine line. You got to market. You might want to show up as the CEO dressed for the position that you have. I get all of that. But at the same time, there's a fine line. And at some point, you just need to do the thing, right? And be humble about it. So
yes.
That's what I've got. So the next one I've got popularity over accountability. What do you have for that?
So, I mean, lots of people want to be popular and be in the cool crowd or whatever.
Of course. Fitting in is like a basic human, I think, need almost.
Right. And so I think that at least for me personally, and I can say this because I'm now officially a senior citizen, but I think maturity helps with this. Like, I don't really care if my opinion is popular or not. I just want to be able to stand behind that. So, if I have to have an unpopular discussion with one of my team members who reports to me, I'm sorry if it's going to hurt their feelings, but what's more important is to talk about the thing, right? So, and I think that I've gotten more comfortable with that as I've gotten older.
It's a skill.
It definitely is. And so, I just don't really care that much if I'm popular.
Right.
I just don't. And I want our company to be popular.
Right. Yeah. No, I think of it to your point, like internally. I think Steve Jobs had a great quote. And he was like, if you want everyone to like you, sell ice cream.
Right.
And it was about leadership, because if you're in a leadership position and you want to accomplish anything significant, you're going to have, quote, haters or people that don't agree with you. You're going to have to make decisions that don't make everyone happy. And if your number one goal is to not have any conflict and to have everyone in your life be happy, again, just sell ice cream. Right. Everybody likes ice cream, right? So you can't want to be liked. And then we look at the being popular versus holding people accountable. We've done an entire podcast on why accountability is care, because
it's a form of
care.
It's
a difficult conversation. We've talked about this before. Like, the better friends in your life won't let you drive off a cliff. And sometimes when they give you that tough love advice, it's not always received pleasantly, right?
Rarely.
And you can, as the person giving them advice, you have to care enough to know that this is not going to be a very popular message, certainly to this individual or group of individuals, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to have it because I know ultimately that accountability is the greatest form of care. And this person, either personally or professionally, is driving off a cliff. And I would like to tell them. Now, we all know, we've both lived long enough to know that some people still drive off the cliff, and then they may circle back, or they may never not. They may never circle back. But I still think it's the right thing to do. And when you use our core value of sincere candor, you can do it with sincerity. You don't have to be mean and rude and say, "Oh, dude, you're screwing this up. What's wrong with you?"
Right.
The same thing when you're giving feedback to your team. You can do it in a really kind way with the lens of a common win. But I think accountability is ultimately caring. So if you want to be popular, you're actually going to be a very ineffective leader, and you'll be very disliked in the long run.
Correct.
If people know where they stand, if you're fair, if the expectations are clear and people are held accountable, we talked about those 4 types of leadership, and the best one is high accountability and high support.
Right.
Well, that's what I mean. You got to hold people accountable. If you want to be popular, don't hold them accountable. Let them do what they want.
Yeah.
The end result of that, everybody's terrible. They all end up not liking you because they're not successful in their position. You're doing the company and the people a disservice. So that's where I think.
Well, and I raised 4 kids, and they're very successful kids.
It's a very good example.
And I definitely didn't always win the popularity contest.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, we talked about this earlier. Like, if my 14-year-old teenage daughter wanted to go to a party where there's going to be drinking and the parents are out of town, and I said no, I'm pretty clear that's a very unpopular decision for her, right? I could care less, because her accountability to not getting drunk and getting arrested or whatever might happen at these parties, right? That's the care. And I've already accepted the fact that it's going to be the least popular decision I've ever made. And probably throughout those kids' teenage years, you're going to do lots of things that are not popular amongst your children. Think about, could be the same thing with your team, could be the same thing with your friends. So I think it crosses over many different areas of life, whether it be professionally or personally.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is certainty over clarity. What do you have for that?
So, like, almost nothing in life is certain, right?
That's for sure.
Other than taxes and death. Those are the only 2 certain things, right?
Yep.
So I think that we have to be comfortable with uncertainty. And we can't let that paralyze ourselves. Like, we have to be able to be decisive and, make pivots when necessary, because things are not going to go as planned. They never do. We know that. We started selling franchises, awarding franchises in the fall of 2019, and then 6 months later, the whole world blew up.
3 months later.
Well,
Yeah,
right. The whole world blew up, and we did not see that coming at all. So we had to pivot, and we had to make some decisions, and we had to change the timelines and change the expectations and retool what we had expected to happen. So I think that as long as you are, as a leader, open-minded enough to understand that nothing in life is certain, there are going to be roadblocks and bumps and detours along the way, but you can be decisive and pivot quickly, then you will be able to get through it. So that's what I think about that.
That's all. You sound like Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
But yeah, I mean, and it says certainty over clarity. You're never going to have that. You have to have clarity in order to make those decisions.
I think what it means, like you're never going to have certainty, but clarity comes from both experience. Like I can look at a data set, and based on my experience of 34 years, I can probably make a pretty quick decision, right? Might not always be perfect, but it's a quick decision. Now, what I have here, and this is a statement that I heard, is you don't always make the right decision, but you do have to make the decision right. And what I mean by that is, you have an aim, right? You have clarity on where you're going as a business, say, or maybe in your personal life, and you set a big giant goal.
Right.
You bring all your skills, your team, your emotions, everything you have to bear towards that goal. But here's the deal. Along that road, you're going to run into forks and changes and pivots and all the things, change of direction. Oh, well, we have switched this up. Hey, this product wasn't as good as we thought. Hey, this service would work better if we did it here, right? This type of training, we should switch to the different training tool, whatever. That's going to be forever and a day.
Yep.
And so you can't solve everything in the starting blocks. You just can't. You have to solve it in the journey. So you make a decision, you aim as high as you can, you're going towards this thing. If you don't reach the exact, you might reach something even better. You might reach something 3 degrees to the right or the left. But the journey of trying to attain the highest thing that you can aim for and bringing all of yourself to bear towards that is the thing, right? That's the rub. That's the real thing. So if you can provide clarity for yourself and your team about where you're headed, there's zero certainty. There is. I mean, you can look at a data set and you can get moving, but what I commonly see, certainly with like new entrepreneurs or even people in their personal lives, is they don't make any decision at all. I mean, I had Jake on the podcast, and he's talking about he's on a nuclear submarine that could blow up the whole world, and he's just like, you have to make a decision. Not all of your decisions are catastrophic if they don't work out.
Right.
But you got a team of people, certainly in a submarine, the people in those positions know more about what they're doing than you do. Right. And they're looking at you like, you're going to call this thing or not?
Right.
You have to make a decision. And then if you don't, right, if you make the wrong decision, having the humility to come back and be like, guys, I screwed that up. We're going to pivot. We're going to go here. They respect that, right?
Right.
Same for anyone. So I think don't wait till you have everything aligned. You can pick the brain of every expert. You can have every detail figured out. You still have to make that decision and get moving. And if you don't, you sit in the start blocks. Again, you're going to be stuck. You're going to have a tough road to hoe.
Well, right. It's like paralysis due to overanalysis.
Yeah, paralysis due to analysis. Yeah, 100%. So you're never going to be fully certain. Create clear expectations and move in that direction with everything you have to bear. And you've got to make a decision, right?
Absolutely.
The next one is harmony over conflict.
Yeah. Well, harmony is awesome. I mean, who doesn't want to just live
this reminds me of number one, like status over results, kind of, but
harmonious. But it's not always possible, and sometimes you have to have hard conversations. We talk about this a lot. It's one of our core values, sincere candor. It's something that I utilize almost every day. It's not a fun thing to have hard conversations with people, but if you approach it in the right way and present it from a place of, I'm approaching you because I'm worried about you. I'm concerned about you. I've got let's talk about this and see how we can do the next right thing. Right. So, hard conversations now or harder conversations later is what we always say. So, harmony over conflict, again, not always the right thing to do. You have to be comfortable with having confrontation and conflict. I've not always been like that. I'm one of those who just wanted a happy household or, whatever. I just wanted everybody to be happy and not be mad at each other and not go through those uncomfortable conversations. And that did not serve me well at all. Because at the end of the day, you can't brush things under the rug and expect that they aren't going to boil over at some point in time.
Right.
So I have learned, be okay with confrontation.
Right.
Be okay
Yeah, this
with
one
it.
was strange to me because I thrive on conflict.
I know.
Like, to me, the only way to get to a solution is conflict,
Yeah.
right? Like, even personally, it's like, if we have a problem, let's sit in this freaking room and we're going to cut this thing to the quick, and we're going to get to the core of the problem, and we're going to talk this out, and we're going to leave this room with some kind of solution.
Yeah.
Right? Forget about sleeping on it. Like, oh, that's a crazy idea. I'm not saying I'm right. That's just the way I'm wired. So, but I think on a team, especially on a professional team or in a work setting, indifference is the absolute worst thing you can have. It's just like where they don't, no one, would be like, let's just say that if you're wearing a t-shirt that says MEH, that is probably the worst thing that can happen in your organization. The thing I'm most proud of is when we have our leadership meetings, whether it's offsite or even our weekly meetings, everyone on our leadership team is very engaged, and we will have full-on conflict sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like you and I have like screamed at each other before. I've screamed at other people on the team. I've had people scream back at me. I love that. The last thing I would want to be doing is sitting at a table full of yes men, yes people that would just agree with me no matter what. I mean, I don't always have the best ideas, and like I'm more sales oriented, so I'm going to be more growth mindset. Well, who's the finance person who's like, we can't do that. Like, what are you, crazy?
Right.
So I like a healthy friction. I'm probably tend to lean too much towards conflict, but I'm really proud of the fact that if let's say we're like, hey, we're going to do this as an initiative, and Matt might step up because he's looking at it through the lens of what the customer experience is going to be for the client. And he's like, no, that's an absolutely terrible idea. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And then someone like me will be like, well, why not? I mean, that seems like a good idea to me.
And he'll tell you why.
And I'm going straight at him, and he'll just come right back. And it's like, he's like, I'm dying on this hill.
Right.
We're not doing this.
Right.
But like, for me, I don't know if it's super healthy, but like I need that. Then I know, and then I'm like, okay, got it. Cool. Right. So it may not be for everyone with that level of conflict, but I'm proud of the fact that our leadership team trusts each other enough to be able to have those conversations, those very tough conversations, and that we can go at each other because, again, we're using sincere candor. We all trust that we all have a common win. We're going to leave this room, whether we were like at each other or not, and we're going to be super friendly. We're going to talk about how the weekend was and all the things, right?
100%.
So I think it's the sign of a healthy team. When you look at Patrick Lencioni's book, 5 Dysfunctions of Team, the one that is the most prevalent is giving negative feedback. And our buddy Tim Fulton that spoke at conference last year, he came in and did an exercise with us, and we gave positive feedback, and it was very succinct. Like, name one word for Suzanne. I'm like, diligent or intelligent, whatever that was, right? And then it's like, well, name one bad thing, and somebody'd be like, needs to delegate, and then they would explain it, but you're doing pretty good.
Right,
and then he lets us all get through it, and he's like, how did it make you feel when someone explained the negative feedback? It's like, well, it kind of took some of the legitimacy away from it. It took the sting out of it, but it also took away the impact of it. He's like, yeah, we all do that, right? So that's in a lot of ways that feels like conflict to us, right? But you're doing a disservice to the other person, right? But it's very common on teams. So I'm not saying you have to scream at each other. I'm just saying that you have to be willing to press people, and you have to have a culture set up where they can feel that they can press back, even if you're a air quote superior in the hierarchy of the org chart or whatever.
It works. It works well.
Yeah, I mean, it works for us. We scream at each other, and then we come out and high five and go get a drink later, and everything's great. So it works out well. The last one is invulnerability over trust.
Yeah. So, as a leader, I think it's important to be strong and to have an air of strength and, have some armor up, but because you want to be respected and you want to be thought of as a person that knows what's going on. But I also think that having some vulnerabilities, and in other words, showing your human side, or being able to admit that maybe you were thinking of something incorrectly or wrong in the wrong way, or the narrative in your head wasn't quite right, that actually makes you more approachable. It makes you a better leader to have that humanistic side of things.
Right.
And nobody's perfect. None of us are. I mean, you're pretty perfect, but
Thanks. Did you hear that, everyone?
Pretty perfect.
I'm pretty and perfect.
You're pretty and perfect. But there are times where, we don't agree, and I think you're wrong
100%.
or whatever. And it's great to be able to also, as a leader, come back and say, you know what, I get it now. Like, I'm glad we had that conversation. I was wrong. My initial thoughts were wrong. Thank you for explaining it to me. I see your side. All right.
Yep.
So that's a great leader. And that is a vulnerable leader, a humble leader, a leader who can admit that maybe they made a poor decision or maybe they weren't looking at it the right way. So I like vulnerable and I like trusting because that's what it builds.
Yeah. Well, to your point, it's almost like the last point, like, hey, if you made a mistake and or in our meetings, you're willing to say, hey, you're right. And I think for this almost goes back to the first point over status over results is like, are you willing to ask for help, right? Can you admit your mistakes? And I'm talking about this more internally is the way I'm thinking about it. So like, as an example, we're shooting a lot of video this week for this new course that we're building for both coaches and directors, so that it's a new LMS and it's going to be, it looks great. I think you guys will be really happy with it. In shooting that course, I volunteered like, hey, if you guys need some help, sure. But a lot of what I was talking about, because I built it a million years ago, was like the origins of the programming and the branding. But when I got to the programming part, that's really Matt's wheelhouse. Yeah. So I built it, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so before every module, I took my like sort of script, and some of it was from teleprompter, some was just off the cuff. But I would go to Matt and say, what do you want me to say about this?
Okay. Right.
And so I'm the guy that created it. You would think I wouldn't even ask. I'm like, this is what we need to be saying. I'm like, I have no idea. Matt is in the trenches with this every single day.
Right.
He creates all the programming.
Yep. And has for years.
Yeah. And we're talking about the 6 components of a good session from a technical standpoint, not the core tenets or the behaviors. This is more like the actual stuff.
Yeah.
But I go to Matt. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, don't forget to touch on this. And here's what we see happening a lot. Make sure you mention this. I'm like, oh, great. But I guarantee you, and Matt and I've, when we work together, all of us, but Matt's been here for 15 years almost. Those type of conversations, whether we all realize it or not, that builds trust in Matt to me, because he knows like I'm not trying to status over results. I'm not trying to posture. I want the best possible product to come out. I'm telling Matt, I have no idea on this. Can you help me?
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
But as a leader, I could posture that I know everything about everything, which would be a terrible idea. I think you could see this, but what that does then for Matt is it helps him build trust that like, hey, like I'm a human. I don't know this, right? Same thing.
The big guy's coming to me to ask me.
Right. There's
to give
trust
him
there.
some pointers.
Right. And so then it gives him more autonomy.
So cool.
He can make these decisions. It builds his self-efficacy over time. But I think a million little interactions like that over 15 years, it builds somebody into a man, right? And then he's building his own stuff eventually, and he's smarter at his function than I am.
Yeah.
I think that's also part of it is like to be vulnerable for me as a CEO is to hire people that are better in roles in the company than I am, and you're going to do the same. So if we hire like a finance person, I'm like, I don't know how to run that spreadsheet. Like,
that's why
I understand it once it's built, and I know what I need, but like you go build it. So you have to really be vulnerable to be able to hire people that are better than you at their functions. And I've heard, I think Andy Stanley say, the larger the company gets, the dumber you get.
You and me are going to be the dumbest people in the room.
Well, we may be already. I may already have that title. But no, over time, you're going to hire really, really good people in functions that you don't have a ton of knowledge. You know what the thing does. You've got the big, hairy, audacious goal out there. But you have to be vulnerable to hire people that are smarter than you and be willing to admit, like, I don't really know what it is that you do, but I know what your department should accomplish. And then we've got frameworks like EOS and QS,
of course.
Accountable.
And the metrics,
So that's about it, you guys. I think it's a short read, decent book, The 5 Temptations of a CEO, again, by Patrick Lencioni. And I think that's all for now. Appreciate the insight.
I know you got your founder's call.
I got a founder's call in 3 minutes. All right, guys.
All right.
Appreciate you. Peace
Peace out.